Yeah, we'll begin just in a few seconds, ma'am.
Welcome, madam.
Okay, sir.
Patil sir, can you display the slide from our side? Yeah, over to you, Sneha.
It's my honor to introduce today's eminent speaker, Professor Dr. Vandana Patrawale, Professor in Pharmaceutics Department at Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. She has completed her B.Pharm, M.Pharm and PhD from University of Mumbai. She has 15 years of teaching and research experience in organic, medicinal chemistry, and biostatistics. Her research area comprises of nanotechnology-based drug and gene delivery system, nanodiagnostics, tissue engineering, medical devices, new polymer and lipid conjugates, and surfactant synthesis. She is funded by agencies like BRNS, AICT, DBT, ICMR, DST, UGC, Indo-Swiss, Indo-Japan, Indo-UK projects, and many more. She has international collaboration with University of Missouri, USA, University of Wyoming, USA, University of Geneva, Switzerland, Tokyo University of Science, Japan, University of Bradford, UK. She had 200 international publications with H indexing of 44. She has 13 granted patents and 22 patents in the pipeline. She has 2 books and 25 book chapters to her account. She is also the member of various professional societies, vice president, CRS chapter, editor, CRS, IC, and APTI Women Forum newsletter. She is actively involved in product development and transferred about 20 technologies to industry. She also had presented and delivered many talks in national and international symposiums. She is awarded with Kukreja Oration Award 2020, APTIS Dr. Manjushri Pal Best Pharmaceutical Scientist Award 2019, Bill Melinda Gates Grant Award 2015, APTI Best Teacher Award 2012, Fellowship of Maharashtra Academy of Science, and many more. Finally, to conclude this FDP, we have accomplished scientist with lots of achievements and is also one of the best orator in our field. So, we heartily welcome Professor Dr. Vandana Patrawale, who is an inspiration for many to share her views on computational pharmaceutics role in drug targeting. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, dear, for that kind introduction. Small
We are
mistake
honored to
there.
have you, ma'am.
I never have taught organic chemistry or biostatistics. Kindly make the correction. I
Yeah,
am
we
a
are sorry for
teacher
the. Yeah. Sure,
in
ma'am.
pharmaceutics and drug delivery systems.
Yes, ma'am. You can start
Can
sharing your slides, ma'am.
uh, have I been given the rights? I can't
Yes,
open
yes,
the
ma'am.
tray.
You have been made presenter. Are you able to do it, ma'am?
Can
Or
you
are
see
there
the
any
slide?
difficulties?
Yeah, I'm
No,
not.
ma'am.
Just give me a minute.
Yeah, okay, ma'am.
Is it clear now?
No, ma'am. Slides are not visible.
Mhm.
We are unable to see.
Not
Patil sir,
shared
can you
it.
see?
No,
Just a
not
minute.
shared it, madam.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visible.
Yes.
Can you see the slide now?
Yes, ma'am. It's clearly visible.
Okay, so at the outset, I would like to thank Professor Bhatia for giving me this opportunity to share some of the work which we have done at Computational Pharmaceutics, role in drug targeting, and of course, the whole organizing team of Bharatiya Vidyapeeth's College of Pharmacy, Kolhapur. Already introduction has been done, but yes, I would like to reiterate that this is the place, Institute of Chemical Technology, which we believe is real portal of excellence. And once you walk through these premises, you are having a different kind of energy, which propels you to do more and more. So it's my pleasure to be part of Atal Academy sponsored FTP, which has been organized by Bharati Vidyapeeth. So these will be my contents. I'll start with introduction, give you some idea of computational tools in pharma, introduce you to computational pharmaceutics and MD simulations, how they can be applied to nanocarrier-based drug delivery systems, because that's where targeting features. And most of the case studies which I'll be presenting will be what we have done in our research group. And of course, finally, we will conclude. I'm sure last few days you've been hearing about artificial intelligence, and you must be at a much level than whatever work we have done. But nevertheless, I would not fail in my duty to stress the importance of interdisciplinary research. Those days are gone when one could work in isolation. People have been working, biologists working with chemists and physicists. Same way, the basic sciences people now are shaking hands with nanotechnologists or colloidal carriers. I mean, fields are innumerous. It could be maths, it could be anything. But the results are really fabulous once you start working in a way together. As far as artificial intelligence is concerned, I'm sure all these aspects would have been covered by the previous speakers. So typically, we all know that AI is going to work on inputs of humans itself. So it's very important. The softwares which you use are very important. So some examples are given here. The radiologist can send the raw MRIs or images, and because AI has processed the information, direct diagnosis would be available to the radiologist. Same will be the case with physicians who can pass on unstructured information from variety of sources, and they get the clinical decision report. So how is AI very important for researchers? It really helps to do predictive analysis, and because of which then you can go or synthesize if it is drug delivery, or maybe formulate if it is drug delivery systems. Not only that, just like previous speaker spoke, you can feed in a lot of omics data too to AI and then get the validated SOPs. So applications, of course, are many. Where does a market stand? It's very important to know that, to decide, what is the future direction. And I would like to compliment at this point Bharati Vidyapeeth's College of Pharmacy for selecting such a theme. This is the future. Rather, we can say that that's already happening. In future, you will see many more things which are based on AI getting translated into market. So global artificial intelligence in healthcare market, it is expected to reach $22,790 million by 2023. And it is growing at a cumulative annual growth rate of almost 50%. Unlike all other industries which are growing at 5 to 7%, this is going to grow at 50%. That itself tells you importance. And within that also, you can see that Asia Pacific region basically is the one which will exhibit the highest CAGR, which is exceeded 50%. Though this is projected, I'm sure with COVID coming into place, this has gone much higher already, because telemedicine was practiced to what an extent all have witnessed. So CAGR obviously is on rise. Now coming to role of computational tools in pharma, you can see this particular figure which I've tried to plot. So past was of descriptive and diagnostic type, whereas future, though more complex, is predictive and prescriptive. This slide says it all. Obviously, value is more here. So as a value is more, complexity is also more, but with basic understanding becoming better day by day, I'm sure that complexity will be less and value which it will fetch will be more. We cannot deny the importance of computational tools in pharma. And you can look at these three gentlemen, Martin Karplus, Michael Levitt, and Aray Warshel. Who are they? They are the ones who have got Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2013. And very clearly they have said, today the computer is just as important a tool for chemists as a test tube. This statement says it all. So they were working on proteins. And you know that earlier days, people used to use ball and stick model to explain to students the chemistry, the stereochemistry. So as the complexity of is increasing, obviously those models are also not sufficient. And therefore, they did research in this direction, and hence this particular statement which has come. So all of you must be familiar and would have heard many lectures on computer-aided drug design. What I'm going to do today is talk to you about computational pharmaceutics. How can one use computer-aided designs to make drug delivery systems in a much, much simpler way so that it can be translated easily to industry. If you look at drug discovery, there has been decades of progress. Of course, the genomic data continues to increase. Experimental insights are improving. Computational power and speed is also increasing. All this need to be integrated, and they are getting integrated now. So you could see that if this was the scenario in 1990, in 2020, we are able to predict how a ligand will react with the receptor. And that is giving us absolutely great information. And if you look at the global scenario, that itself says it all. In the computational biology market alone is projected to be at 12.45 billion US dollar by 2026. The major companies who are acting in this, in fact, very, very active, include Explorus. You have Entelos in Silico Biotechnology, Nimbus Discovery, as well as Chemical Computing Group, Inc. Geography-wise, this is the state, North America leading, Europe, Asia Pacific, and then rest of the world. By end user, if you see, yes, industry and commercial houses are using it, but unless academicians plan and make softwares available to industry, they are not able to use it. So it's a continuous, to and fro information exchange, which is leading to this programs being used by many end users. And by application wise, I'm sure this particular FDP would have covered all. So how is it used in preclinical development, in human body simulation, drug discovery and disease modeling, cellular and biological simulation, and we fall in this class of others, wherein we are talking about computational pharmaceutics. So from hypothesis to technology, what are the drivers? So biology, as it is evolving and we are getting newer and newer insights, it's leading to newer biological questions. Because of these questions, the technology gets developed. So newer technology is coming in. Obviously, as a newer technology comes in, newer data gets generated. And if newer data is getting generated, it has to be fed to computers. AI modeling has to be done. This results again in newer hypothesis. So what I'm trying to show in this slide is this particular process is iterative and reiterative. So this will go on and on till we have the perfect solution to every problem. So if you look at various computational tools in pharma, I would say that if one needs to study ligand interaction and molecular dynamics, you have the Schrodinger, BioSuite, Autotalk, Gold, etc. If it is molecular modeling and SAR, one could use Maestro, Gram, Sybil, Xsuite, PASS, etc. For pharmacokinetics, industry is using now Gastro Plus, but you do have DDD Plus and MapCheck. And for data analysis and behavioral studies, you do have GeneSpring, QSAR Pro, REST 2009 software, and EthoWatcher. EthoWatcher specifically for studies. So obviously with genomics, proteomics coming in, GeneSpring is going to be really very important tool. But what I have done is I've listed these three, at least academic institute should have access to these three to start with. And some of them, of course, are not very, very costly. Some need annual maintenance and annual cost is associated. But thanks to COVID, our government actually gave Schrodinger to all the academic institutes, those who participated, free. And that's how we could give training to even our undergraduate students on Schrodinger. Obviously, we do have a licensed version, but this they could do it from home, sitting at home. So Schrodinger, Material Studio, and GROMACS are some of the very, very important ones which are being utilized. Now, if you look at what are the domains of applicability and how one uses these categories of simulation methods, you can look at this particular figure. You can see that level of detailing increases when we move from continuum models to quantum mechanics. So obviously, if one particular function, continuum model or DPD, that's dynamic dissipative particle dynamics rather, if a function is done in milliseconds here, the same function in quantum mechanics will be done in picoseconds. So what are these? Let us look at these one by one. So if you look at DPD, that is dissipative particle dynamics, requires longer time and lengths. So it's a coarser level of simulation, typically used with rheology and to study the particle dynamics from that point of view. It is not atom to atom. Coarse grain is used a lot in pharmaceutics, and this gives you idea about electrostatic and hydrophobic interactions. Of course, here you can group the atoms and they can be treated as one interaction point or bead. You do have AA, which is all atomic, wherein absence of bond formation and cleavage is looked at. In fact, level assigns point charges to each and every atom. And that's why this is more complex as compared to coarse grain. Here you are grouping together. Here each atom is involved. And then moving to the last one, which is quantum mechanics. This is going to the next stage. That means it will look at electronic motion. So please keep in mind, yes, from continuum models, DPD is a coarsest model, I would say. Quantum mechanics is the best model. Obviously, best comes with a cost. This slide is very, very important because one needs to understand what are the basic steps if you need to do atomistic molecular dynamic simulation. So first step is you need to construct a molecule. Obviously, many of the molecules, chemical molecules, are available. If they are not available, you could use ChemDraw and design that molecule. As far as a receptor is concerned, you can get those receptors, the construction from PDB databases. They are available and they are available freely. Once that is done, one needs to define the interatomic bonded and non-bonded forces. So that means this is a pre-processing step, which is a very, very important step. What are you doing is you are drawing the structures and setting up a simulation box. When you're setting up a simulation box, you are feeding in your chemical moiety and you're feeding in the receptor with which you want to work. Obviously, you can add these molecules one by one. If there are more than 2-3 excipients which you want to use, add one by one. Reason being, because you will know that they would start interacting with each other. So you should be able to fill up whatever molecules are in question in this box setup. And that box setup would be governed by the size of that setup will be governed by how many molecules you are going to feed up here. Obviously, software are there to assist you. So there is no problem. You can always ask questions and you will get the answers immediately as to what should be the dimensions. How will you set up the boundaries, etc. Once that is done, this is a very important step too, which is energy minimization. So what would this do? This will remove all the overlaps which are happening between molecules so that it can give you idea about interatomic forces. So whatever overlaps are there, because otherwise that setup box will be real huge. So energy minimization. And once that is done, you go on simulating it till it reaches thermodynamic equilibrium. Now, typically, if you look at international publications, they require for molecular dynamic study 200 to 500 nanosecond data. But here in ICT, for initial screening purposes, we are okay just setting up for 5 nanoseconds also. That gives you a good trajectory to follow. So molecular dynamic studies, and they start, you will get all the coordinates. So record the coordinates or the momenta of atoms at predefined intervals. So this is termed as simulation trajectory. Once you have got that, then final processes of post-processing stage where you are analyzing, you are determining all the properties of interest from this particular simulation trajectory. Some of you would have used, of course, some CAD softwares would be familiar with this. But some of you who are in pharmaceutics have not yet used it. Try and understand these things. So you should have knowledge about chemistry of your molecule. Obviously, once you set up the simulation box, it will give you idea about what kind of forces are involved in interaction, whether they are van der Waals or whether they are hydrogen bondings or hydrophobic interactions. All of that data you will get when you're setting up the box. Coming to the main topic, how can you use this in drug delivery system design? You can use it in innumerable ways. One is you can do physicochemical characterization. That means you can look at the properties like partition coefficient, solubility, etc. Once you have that data, you can also get information about whether your system gets self-assembled. Whether the system which you have designed, say for example dendrimers, how does it interact with the drug? You can get information about how much of my drug is getting loaded into the system and how is it distributed throughout the system. It's a very, very important point which all of us are eager to know. So that also is possible through computational pharmaceutics. As also you can get to know about aggregations, leakages, etc. That means, in short, about stability of the designed drug delivery system. How does it interact with different cell membranes? If you're making liposomes, whether they fuse with the skin membrane, whether if you're taking them, injecting them parenterally, whether they get internalized. If they get internalized, where do they get inset? Do they get rested in cytoplasm or they go to mitochondria? Can also be answered using these softwares. One can also know how do they interact with membrane proteins. You know that protein binding plays a very, very important role as far as circulation time in the body is concerned. So one can get information even about that. As far as once they reach the circulation, you can get to know how do they interact with the ions. So if you want to actually know whether whatever body ions are there, how your system is going to interact with them, you can put them in the simulation box and see how they interact, whether they destabilize your delivery system. This type of information, and as I told you already, how the drug release happens from endosomes, whether they get inside the cytoplasm or they get translocated into the nucleus. Information about intracellular passages is also possible from this. So now one example of each of the type. So first is using this, how can we know about physicochemical properties? So obviously one can do solubility calculations, and this follows Flory-Huggins theory, entropy-based theory. This is also related to Hansen-Hildebrand solubility parameters. Not only solubility, of course, miscibility of different ingredients. So if you have to do, make a microemulsion, you are doing n number of experiments to know my drug is soluble in which surfactant, co-surfactant, which oil, all of that you can get from miscibility or solubility parameters computationally. So you can avoid doing experiments and then take the screened excipients and go ahead. Not only that, you would know about thermodynamic stability, getting the idea about glass transition temperature, and of course about the chemical degradation also. And as I already mentioned, it's very easy to compute partition coefficient of the system. So one slide on this, wherein indomethacin miscibility was looked in different carriers. Carriers were polyethylene oxide, glucose, sucrose, etc. And once that was done by computational route in silico, It was also correlated using thermoanalytical technique, that is DSC. So using the compass force field, molecular dynamic simulations were done. Two things are very important: cohesive energy density and solubility parameter. Cohesive energy density refers to energy required to vaporize a mole of liquid per unit volume. And solubility parameter is nothing but square root of this CED. So if you look at the data here, indomethacin 23.9, PEO, glucose, and sucrose. So that particular excipient, which has value close to indomethacin, in that indomethacin will be miscible. So obviously, if you look at this, the rank order would be PEO followed by sucrose and then glucose. So this is very clear. If you look at the differences in this PEO, it is miscible. So once that is done, it was then compared with DSC analysis. So if it is soluble, obviously in DSC, you will not see peak of indomethacin. So this is one simple example to give you an idea. Can it be used in drug delivery systems? Yes, answer is yes. And those drug delivery systems, are they restricted? Answer is no. So it could be used. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am.
Yeah, it's showing me Wi-Fi issue. So, okay. So you can
Are
use
there
it.
issues from? Are there issues you are facing?
No, it just
Yeah.
gave me a note that network issue. So I thought, let me check.
Oh, yeah. Okay, okay, ma'am. No, you're clearly audible.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
ma'am.
you can use it for lipidic drug delivery systems, polymeric drug delivery systems, for dendrimers, which are, surfactant-based systems. You can make them amino acid-based systems too. And now research is moving in that direction to make biocompatible dendrimers. Can you make cope crystals using computational simulation? Answer is yes. Can you design protein and peptide systems? Answer is yes. And of course, one could look at how to functionalize all kind of inorganic nanoparticles for their better utility in drug delivery systems too. So we have been working in all these areas. So some examples maybe from that. I earlier talked about coarse grained models. So for those who did not understand, this schematic will be very handy. So this is how fully atomistic system will look. So it is giving about 149 interaction sites. If you look at fully atomistic system, if you go to united atoms, that means like atoms, if you group together and then make this kind of a model, this is just 59 interaction sites. And then if you go to coarse grain, this is still coarser. So just by 12 interaction sites, you can actually depict this particular lipid, and then it will be very easy for you to look at the interactions which are taking place. So this is how a liposome looks like. I'm sure all of you are aware, and it's a bilayer system. In fact, I tell my students it's just like a mayonnaise sandwich. So you do have a lipid core on both sides. Like you have bread, you have polar surfaces. It could be the other way around also. But in this context, you can see that this has a hydrophilic head exhibited in blue here, and then it has a hydrophobic tail, which is here. So depending on what is the molecule in question, you will either entrap it in the core, you will entrap it here, or you can entrap it also on the surface. So for liposomes, coarse grain model is a very, very appropriate approach. It's very important to capture essential physics of the system of interest rather than the specific chemical details. No, you are not interested here, atom to atom, what happens. What you are interested is if you're designing a drug delivery system which is liposome based, whether my drug is where it purports to be, where it should be. So where is it getting entrapped? You are interested to know that rather than how each and every molecule is interacting. But nevertheless, you can get idea about its structure. You can get idea about whether it will pass through brains. You can also get idea about the dynamics part of it. So you can look at this particular slide. It tells you as to how in computational model your bilayers would look like. So this is a typical phospholipid bilayer. This is the liposome. You can see the skin lipid membranes. They look like this. If you need to look at whether the molecule is getting taken up, getting permeated, you can see this is what indicates the molecule and how it is going through the model membrane. Can you know about how my nanoparticles are going to interact with the membrane in question? Answer is yes. So these are nanoparticles and these are the membranes. And you can also look at what would be the best penetration enhancer for my kind of moiety, be it small moiety, small chemical moiety, or be it biological moiety. So I'm sure this simulation is giving you idea about the 3D structure. So once you have this 3D structure, you can see that you can throw your molecule of interest in this domain and then look whether it permeates through or not. One example from polymeric drug delivery, wherein one could control the cellular uptake of nanoparticles using pH-sensitive polymer. How is that done? The schematic explains it all. If you want to know whether endocytosis of nanoparticle is happening, at what pH it is happening. Many times you know that you are using pH sensitive polymers. You want to understand whether my drug in question gets released, and if it gets released, whether it fuses with the membrane or not. So A is a schematic diagram when pH is lower than pKa of the polymer. pH is lower than pKa of the polymer. You can see that this indicates nanoparticle, and some loose ends which are there, it indicates a polymer. So obviously when pH is lower than pKa, there are fewer numbers of monomers which are coating rather this nanoparticle. As a result of which it is actually free to interact with membrane in question. So once it is free to interact, you can see that in 18 seconds, rather microseconds, it completely gets engulfed and is taken in. But take the case of pH equal to pKa, endocytosis is complete. Because when pH is equal to pKa, this polymer completely coats the nanoparticles. Very, very rigidly it will coat the nanoparticles, as a result of which there is a total repulsion from the membrane. So these nanoparticles are not going to get engulfed. Exceed that pH, again nanoparticle gets engulfed, but here the reason is not the same. Reason not the same as case A. Reason is that once the polymer starts coating this nanoparticle surface, because pH is high, between the polymer there is a repulsion, as a result of which some surfaces definitely remain exposed, and because it is low energy, it really gets engulfed. So this very clearly can tell you whether the polymeric particle you have designed will get engulfed by a given membrane or not. Moving on to dendrimers and dendrons, I'm sure all of you must be aware of what is a dendron. So dendron has a focal point, which is a chemically addressable group, and then it has branched surfaces. So there will be functional groups at all these ends. They could be OHs, they could be NH2s, they could be COH, and so on. Depends on what is your starting point. So these are known as terminal end groups. So obviously you are building generation. So this is 0. So this becomes the first generation, the second generation, and so on. So you can see if this is 0, this is G1, first generation, second generation, third generation. So likewise, people have gone up to synthesizing till G5 stages. PAM-AM dendrimers, which are there, are very, very highly cationic, commercially available. But just a word of caution, if you are using PAM-AM, as you increase the number of generation, the moiety becomes toxic. Why? Because obviously when you have very, very highly cationic structure, that is going to lead to issues in the body once it's taken by the body. So be very careful as to what you are using in the drug delivery system. Rather, I would say what concentration you are using in the system is very important. So one could look at what is the flexibility of these dendrimers and how do they bind very effectively with other molecules. Now, these other molecules could be, suppose if you want to put your drug moieties, advantage of this is as such a high surface area, you can actually conjugate your drug in all these terminal groups. Even if you do that, best point is the size remains nano. This is the least size. You'll see that most of the dendrimers are in 5 to 10 nanometer range. And that is the advantage. Not only what happens with the drug, you can also look at what would be the effect of solvents, what would be the effect of counter ions, pH, salt, generation number, etc. So in the simulation box, if you throw different salts, you would know if I add sodium chloride, whether my system would be stable or it will get destabilized. Immediately you would know. That can give you link as to what electrolytes you need to use. Imagine if you're making a nano system and finally you want to make a colloidal system. In colloidal system, take it that it is for, say, diarrhea, where typically you need to give very high concentration of electrolytes. So whether you can give those high amount of electrolytes, still keeping the drug moiety intact, you can know by using computer-aided softwares. This is a case study wherein PAM-AM dendrimer actually its interaction with DNA were seen. You know that now DNA, siRNA delivery, all is becoming very, very important. So this helical structure, I'm sure all of you are aware, represents the DNA. And what you can see here is a coarse grain structure actually of your dendrimer. And these dendrimer are at different stages. This is G3, this is G4, and this is G5. So purpose of this study was, if I'm using a dendrimer, how will it react with DNA and whether it will change the helical nature of DNA or whether it will itself get deoriented. So this particular, this schematic is so simple to understand. This is telling you that when you are having a G3, that's generation 3 dendrimer, there is a minute deformation of DNA. In case of G4, both DNA as well as dendrimer are deformed. But if you go to G5, you can see that DNA is deformed, but your dendrimer does not get deformed. So if you want to deliver something which needs to interact very well with DNA and give the right kind of incision wherever it is needed, G5 would be preferable. Whereas if you want that nothing should happen to my DNA, but at the same time the drug moiety should get delivered, you could go in for G3. That's the reason in our lab we are restricting ourselves to G2 and G3, because you do not want, we are looking at small molecules at present. And those small molecules, you don't want that they do any alterations at DNA level. So you understand the basics, it becomes very easy. You know, your hypothesis is really very clear to you. You can get a lot of information using all these software. We are having in our lab itself Material Studio. The of course Schrodinger, we have a licensed version, so that is a department facility, so we are able to use that too. And many other softwares, whichever are free softwares, we have downloaded and kept. So as and when we have the need, we go on utilizing that. Very glad to tell you that during this COVID time, 3 publications from undergraduate students have come on molecular modeling. So one on tea, green tea versus black tea, whether it would be useful for COVID and which one is good. One on curcumin and its analog, actually got accepted, and one on other polyphenols. We are looking a lot at natural moieties, so screening a lot of polyphenols and looking at what happens. Plus, they took part in drug discovery hackathon, and we selected the category of remdesivir. So, other drugs which can become potential leads, and very exciting data is available there too. So if we get leads from there, obviously B forms have done that homework. Now M forms can actually formulate and take it further for research. Looking at mechanism of endosomal escape for pH responsive dendrimers, we all know that in endosomes these dendrimers are protonated. So once they are protonated, obviously their osmotic pressure increases because dendrimers will go on swelling. And once that swelling actually happens, electrostatic interactions come into place that drop the critical membrane tension. They will allow the nanoparticle to get escape from these endosomes. You know that endosomal escape is a very, very important thing. If you want anything to be delivered to the cytoplasm or nucleus. So taking advantage of understanding what are different pHs inside, design the dendrimers in such a way that when the pH decreases, when it goes from 7 to 5, they increase in osmotic pressure. They swell, and that will lead to destabilization. So what you can see in the images down, this is the schematic, but the images which you can see here is how you can visualize even on the computer screen, you know. So if this is the physiological pH, you can see that yes, they have started interacting, but they remain more or less on the membrane. But the moment pH goes down, you can see that they have started entering. So there's an endosome formation. And rather, there's one time where you'll see this particular rupture because of the tense membrane formed. So these are snapshots, of course, of a Martini simulation. Now coming to work which we have done in the ocular retention arena. What was our hypothesis here? We wanted to formulate systems, deliver them to the eyes in such a way that you get prolonged duration of action. You know that most of the eye drops which are there in market need to be instilled many times daily. So for that, this is the hypothesis. This is what I tell all my students to do right on day one. Once the problem is assigned to them, they need to do this. That's why my presentations become easier, because this is ready data available with me. So represented graphically, what do you want? So if you understand what is the structure of the eye membrane, you know that on the outside it is lipidic, then it becomes aqueous. Within this aqueous layer, there's lot of mucin which is available, which acts as a barrier. And then you have a corneal surface. So this is what tear film is composed of. So obviously you can say that If you leave this lipid layer, rest of it is actually a mucoaqueous layer. So hypothesis in our case was, can we design a drug polymer conjugate which interacts well with this mucin layer? If it interacts well, and if we can show it in silico that it interacts well, it will remain with the corneal membrane for a longer period of time. So with that, we took a antibiotic drug and a polymer which comes from a natural source and designed drug polymer conjugates. But even before we did that, we looked at in silico molecular interaction of drug polymer conjugate. Now, we wanted, as I said, prolonged antibacterial action, and we wanted it to be retaining in the mucin layer. Just physically binding would not help, and that's the reason why we explored covalent association of this drug with a mucoadhesive polymer. So what did we do? We looked at the molecular docking. You can see here norfloxacin is a drug, and we have used PMV MA, that is polymethyl vinyl ether malic acid polymer. So you can look at the quick prop score. This is 306, and drug alone gives only 97.5. So this itself has given us an idea that yes, drug alone has this particular property. With Jaguar also we have looked at solvation energy, which is minus 113, and drug, when it interacts with our polymer, has aqueous solvation energy, which is minus 492. Then we went and did a facile synthesis, a one-step synthesis, direct interaction, one-pot synthesis. We look at very simple things which industry can take up, and therefore we did this, of course, characterize it completely as far as chemistry is concerned. But since this lecture focuses on in silico modeling, you can see here this depicts molecular docking of norfloxacin with mucin. It was important to know how it interacts with mucin, and in presence of the polymer, that means when you have a drug polymer conjugate, how it interacts with mucin. So very clearly you can see, if it's visible to you, wherever red lines are there, that is showing point of interactions, which are much more when you have dimeric fragment, meaning when you have norfloxacin polymer conjugate that interacts with the mucin much better way than drug alone. And then we proved it. We went, of course, and did evaluation. So when you did see the in vitro release, you can very clearly see that it releases over 24-hour period. So that means we have achieved our target. Then we also looked at adhesive forces. We do have a texture analyzer wherein we can get the goat cornea, fix it, and then look at the mucoadhesion. And when we looked at mucoadhesion, of course, it was highest with the drug polymer conjugate. And it was much better. This is a control. So it was much better than the control. So as against the drug alone. So this has given us real confidence, and this again is the technology under transfer. Looking at polymeric hydrogels, we have looked at cross-linked xyloglucan hydrogels. We have many patents around this. In fact, xyloglucan, we are using it left and right for all kind of nano drug delivery systems by almost all the routes. So here, we wanted to look at what is the structure of xyloglucan and how does it interact with different gelators. Why were we doing this? We had actually a Bill and Melinda Gates project on vaccines where we had proposed that again we'll do one-step synthesis of vaccine. And that one-step synthesis, we thought we would do it using supercritical technology. So wherein we will be putting this particular polymer, whatever gelator, whatever antigen, and end result would be a ready to use nano formulation, which at the most we'll lyophilize or spray dry depending on the particle in question. So for that, it was very important for us to understand which gelator to use, because gelator is a must. We wanted to swell this, that solvation, desolvation is a very important step in any nanoparticles. So we wanted to do that. And therefore, we looked at what way xyloglucan will interact with different gelators. So we also looked at different gelling concentrations and looked at what would be, as the xyloglucan content goes on increasing, how will it behave in presence of different gelators. This was experimentally done, but before that, this is what was schematically or the in silico done. And very clearly from the trajectory, which was 1 nanosecond trajectory, okay, 1 nanosecond. In that 1 nanosecond, we came to know that it will interact very well with glycerol. In fact, here we have looked at even picoseconds. And when it interacts, we've seen that it forms a very strong hydrogen bond. And distance is less than 2 Armstrong. This is very important. When you are looking at anything which interacts well, that distance should be less than 2 Armstrong. Then you say that yes, it does interact very well. So moiety in question, xyloglucan, interacted very well with glycerol and water. So then, of course, we went ahead, and once this is done, we looked at how long these droplets would be stable. To our surprise, they were stable as far as ICH conditions are concerned. As such, these nano droplets, which otherwise, those of you who are working in this area know that they are not stable. These nano droplets were stable ICH 4075 for 6 months. So that means we now have a platform. In fact, that's a platform which we have submitted proposal for the DBT Birac and got it for COVID. Same platform we'll be using for intranasal delivery. Another case study is of polyphenols, phytopolyphenols, wherein we looked at anti-HIV potential. So again, this of course is given by student. I am just using it. So if you look at the receptors, you need to understand that ligands, they bind to the hydrophobic region of viral GP120. And if ligand can bind to this very, very strongly, it will not allow fusion to happen with the membrane in question. So what we were trying to design, we were trying to look at, actually when we started our work, this is also DBT funded project, our project was on designing a rectal microbicide. That is for homosexuals, microbicide, so that of course HIV could not be transmitted to the partner. Then later on, we actually got getting the good results. We vaginal microbicide, so that even heterosexual partners do not transmit. And here we were looking at 2-3 aspects. One is whether it can act as a plain microbicide, so a hygiene product. See, same platform has given us so many products. Vaginal microbicide. Second is anti-HIV. And third is if it can give contraception also, it can give anti-contraceptive effect also. So we have got a product which has all three using simple moieties. Idea was to use natural products so that you do not get the side effects which are generally associated with all the antiretrovirals. And they were very reluctant to give me this project, but I'm a fighter. I said you need to see the data of in silico and then decide whether you want me to take it forward. And now that results of cell lines is available, they are astonished. So these phenols which we looked at, theaflavin, ECGC, ellagic acid, gallic acid, and then you can see that when we did in silico screening, This is a RMSD plot. You know, RMSD plot, typically you should not see variations. And if you get variation, see, this is variation within 0.5. Typically, you get variation within 20. So that means it's not very effective. RMSD plot itself is showing that many of these gallocatagens, and polyphenols will be very, very effective. And that was proved when we went and did in vitro screening. So we have done it by many ways, more than 2 ways, and taken negative, positive control both. And in fact, almost all the polyphenols showed very good activity. Of course, our focus here was on ellagic acid, and that definitely outperformed many. We went ahead, and since this is another area which is in our lab, curcumin analogs, people said that curcumin, if you use, it will be staining, right? No one would like to use any thing which is staining, any formulation which is staining. We said, okay, we have answer for that. So went on to tetrahydrocurcumin, which is a curcumin analog, non-staining, and perform the MD stimulations. And if you can see that this is CD4 and this is GP1T, with which we want the ligand to be actually bound, how it remains in the cavity, if you can see, this is the binding pose of curcumin complex, meaning GP120 with GP120 after MD simulation. C indicates the interactions. This is a binding pose of THC with the GP120, and this shows interaction. In fact, this was great learning. You can see, as I told you, if you see red arrows, and if you see more of those, means it's more interacting. So binding interaction of THC with GP120 residue, of course, it was not within 2 Armstrong, but it was too good. But definitely, it was better than the gold standard. Gold standard, which is used in all the studies, is BMS. BMS stands for Bristol Myers Squibb. So there's a coded compound which gives glide score of -5. And see what is our polyphenols doing. They are much better, not only than BMS 8006. By the time we finished the study, there was a derivative which came, which they proposed as a better one than BMS. All these are synthetic moieties having a lot of side effects, very high dose, used typically in combination with 3 drugs. And this alone is much better than even BMS derivative. So now we have designed an applicator. We have a formulation ready with stability results, and NGO has taken it for evaluation. We have to obviously start with the NGO first and then go to industry partner, because industry needs proof. And simultaneously, the study has to be done in primates. We have completed study. Small animal studies will not be of use here. It has to be done in primates. So we have identified a partner in US and studies will be done there. So lowest energy conformations were generated during simulation. They show that curcumin interacts with TRP427 and it interacts through hydrogen bonding. Whereas the THC, which we have seen, it interacts both with ASP368 as well as TRP427. So that means it has better affinity. So this, just by looking at the screen, we knew that this is better. But of course, we had the glide scores. Not only that, as mentioned earlier, we went a step ahead and did all the cell line studies also in collaboration, and results are good. So this is the last case study. I hope I have 10 minutes at least.
Yeah, ma'am, no problem.
So this is the last study which just got awarded yesterday, actually, for Sitare Gandhian Young Technology Innovation Award. So I'm presenting it, of course, without giving the moiety name because its patent is still not published, but giving you an idea as to how we go about. So we started here with homology modeling. We have used, I've coded it as VBPN. Now, VBPN 3D structure was not available. It is new thing, right? It's an innovation. So it was not established one. So what we did is we made the 3D structure and we validated it using Ramchandran plot and docking studies. Then we did sitemap analysis. Sitemap analysis is typically done to look at whether it has drug-like properties or not. I'm sure all of you know what are drug-like properties, so druggability needs to be seen. And once that sitemap analysis was done, we made sure, for drug to be druggable, it has to have a score of around 1. And site 1 had a druggability score of about 1. So this gave us enough confidence. Then we went and did target selection. Since this was meant for Alzheimer's, there are variety of targets in Alzheimer's. So you do have cholinesterase receptors, NMDA receptors, secretase receptors, APP receptors, and of course A beta fibrils. So there are many, many receptors, but of this, for moiety to act as a therapeutic one, A beta fibril will be the best, and that's why we focused on A beta fibril. Of course, we have looked against all these receptors also, but the data which I'll be showing you would be for A beta fibrils, that is amyloid beta. We all know that plaque gets formed, which actually leads to memory loss. And in fact, I have offered myself to that student as first volunteer. I'm forgetting a lot nowadays. So we started, made a formulation. Of course, after doing this, we knew that it is interacting very well. We have a drug-like structure. We went ahead and made a formulation. We did the stability studies. But when we went to do animal studies, our animal ethical committee did not approve. They said that you do this study, which is thioflavin T binding assay. They said you do thioflavin T binding assay, and if that results are positive, we'll allow you to use so many high number of animals. We said, since we had confidence from in silico data, we said we'll do this also. So we imported kits. So looked at, typically if A beta fibril is there, that complexes with thioflavin T to give fluorescence. Now our hypothesis is, if my compound is acting on A beta fibril, the fluorescent intensity will reduce. So this we actually have now total data. In fact, it is working in millimolar concentration. What we did is to show the committee, we went one step ahead. We showed them even SEM results. So these colorimetry results were there, the fluorimetry, sorry. These results anyway were there, but we presented them with this data. So this is typically how amyloid beta fibril will look like. And if plaque formation happens, this is how plaques look under scanning electron microscope. And if my moiety, the formulation is really very good, it will start degrading these plaques. And you can see that it is degrading these plaques, which are very big plaques. It's broken them down. So this gave us real good confidence, and that also 2 millimolar concentration. And in fact, even lesser concentrations are active when we have now made it as a nano formulation. Earlier, this was pure moiety, and then with formulation, it has really gone ahead. So we made a microemulsion, looked at ex vivo permeation. Again, when we say ex vivo permeation, we are designing a nasal system. We're working a lot in that area. So looking at a delivery by nasal route, so that we don't want to trouble patients of Alzheimer's with injections. They forget to take tablets. So if we can design something which is given once daily or even less, once weekly, nothing like it. So it's just a start, but we have some real exciting data. And yes, we designed the microemulsion, and you can see this ex vivo permeation. So this is when we are taking, it doesn't go in solution, but we have to take it in organic solvent to take it in solution. This is how the ME, that's microemulsion, permeates. And we also made one adhesive, muco-adhesive microemulsion, just to see which one will perform better. So looked at the permeation, mucoadhesion, and then looked at the targeting efficiency. And if you look at this targeting efficiency, you will see that if this is the targeting efficiency for solution 445, Microemulsion is behaving enhancement ratio 4. That means 400-fold better performance. And over a period of time, mucoadhesive microemulsion is also giving. Though in the initial hours, this is not as good at microemulsion, but over a period of time, mucoadhesive is also giving us very, very good results. What was important was to establish that nothing happens to the neurons. I'm giving something new, and that also in nano form. So once they reach brain, it shouldn't happen that neurons, the normal neurons start getting affected. So we did, in fact, a very elaborate study. This is again in collaboration with NIRRH, and found that there was no degeneration. This is what is very important. I'm very, very thankful to SKBCOP at Nagpur and Dr. Milind Umekar's group to give us the facilities to do video tracking and setting up this full protocol for us. In fact, now this will be patented, and you can see the protocol. You're giving A beta peptide on day 0, then you're training the animals using radial arm maze. Then you are starting your treatment, meaning it could be no treatment where only saline is given, or it could be treatment wherein we have given our formulation nasally. We have also given a gold standard donepezil, which is used for Alzheimer, and that would be given from day 8 to 27. And again, from day 28, though you are giving 2 training sessions per day to these animals, you look at how they behave. Not only how they behave, behavioral studies need to be done, but we have also done biochemical estimation. So they do have this motorized stereotaxic apparatus, and Dr. Taksande has expertise in this. Though we have it in ICT, unfortunately, at that time of point, the animal house was not available because of the load. And secondly, the stereotaxic expertise, the person who already had shifted to Singapore. So we couldn't do it at ICT. And I'm so happy that they could really help us to the best of their abilities. And I don't have gratitude to express, no words to express my gratitude. So this is radial arm maze. As you can see, food would be kept here. So obviously, when you keep animal here, they'll have tendency to pick up food from where which arm food has been kept. But if you are giving them A beta peptide, they'll be highly confused. Either they'll go to these arms, or even if they have taken the food from this arm, they'll again go back to this arm. So that is the behavioral studies, and this is how we have plotted it. Excellent results. All I want you to do is look at donepezil and then see how our formulation is behaving in all the graphs. So working memory as well as reference memory errors were plotted. So working memory is where you had food and again they have gone the same arm. Reference memories, they have been trained, but they are still going to the other arm. And you can see that the formulation is really behaving, in fact, at times much, much better than the donepezil. Donepezil is given intranasally here, but we also have a intraperitoneal data, and it is giving us better results than that too. And this is the results of retrieval latency, and that is also, that means for how long that effect will remain. There also the formulation is behaving better. And in fact, I have told them to start studies. They started initially, they were not sure whether it will behave properly, though they've started with ME. And I'm sure that if we start with ME, which is mucoadhesive, this latency, would be much, much better with a mucoadhesive system. So with this, we have one natural formulation which immediately, definitely can go in the market. And of course, only behavioral studies, though they were video tracks, we didn't want to have a bias, and because I was not sitting there, they said that don't worry, we'll do all the biochemical analysis for you too. And these are brain derived neuronal factors, and you can see this is how your our formulation, that is microemulsion, behaves. Two regions, hippocampus, and we have also looked at frontal cortex. We looked at TNF alpha level also, as well as IL-6, because majorly you know that all neurodegenerative diseases will cause inflammation. So you can see that this is where A beta plaque has got formed. Obviously, inflammation has reduced. They are reaching, absolutely, in fact, they are comparable with the normal animals. So obviously, these results are very exciting, but we would want to look at what happens in the, of course, in the higher animals and in the, definitely in the human beings. So this is how we went about and have completed, starting from in silico, actually have completed all the pharmacodynamic studies. So in conclusion, I would like to say that analogous to the paradigm shift of drug development, which has happened in past 3 decades by computer-aided drug design, this field of computational pharmaceutics also has a great potential to shift the paradigm of drug delivery research in the near future. And in fact, in drug targeting, n number of things can be done. So we have been working majorly in these areas, and you'll see most of the examples which I give in any of the presentations are from these areas. And this was one attempt wherein we are looking at our field of synthesizing newer things and then coupling it with our field of nano delivery, and then of course looking at how in silico models can help us plan well and get really remarkable results which can be taken in vivo. And these are some of our technology transfers and the platforms which have already happened. And I will fail in my duty. If I do not actually thank all my collaborators, and including, Tatya Sahib Kore College of Pharmacy from Kolhapur, as well as I wish Dr. John gives me the logo, and SKB COP, who have been instrumental and in a lot of my research database. And this is the motto with which all my students work, which in a nutshell is nothing but focus. So once given a topic, they focus totally on that. And the net results is we have a very, very happy family, as you can see. And I'll fail in my duty if I do not acknowledge Shivraj Naik, who is a Sitare GYTI awardee. And majorly, it is his work which has been presented in this particular presentation. And of course, Anjali Pandya, who helped me with the slides. And I would like to end my presentation by saying imagination is more important than knowledge. Of course, said a great scientist, Albert Einstein, knowledge is limited. It's the imagination which encircles the world. So with that, thank you so much. And I'm open to any questions which you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session full of all your experimental successes that you have done or you have been doing. So it was a wonderful exposure to all of us. Questions have started coming in, ma'am. So first participants, I will call upon Dr. Archana. You can ask your question.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I am working on same area where we are developing intranasal formulation. So we are facing many challenges regarding the solubility of product, as we are also working in natural product. So yours, this work is also like same delivery through the nasal route. Ma'am, can you highlight some points which we should
Hello.
consider during development of intranasal system?
So since this particular seminar, the FTP is focused on artificial intelligence, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So what you can do is you can, if you have Material Studio, you can start with Material Studio and look at the solubility parameters. The first case study which I had given, which gives you idea about miscibility as well as solubility. So you can start with that. But if you do not have any of the softwares, then I would suggest that you understand the physico-chemical properties of your natural compounds well. So first try and classify them as far as BCS classification is concerned, biopharmaceutical classification system. So if you go to US FDA site, on basis of solubility and permeability, they have given experiments, how you have to do those experiments. So classify them and which class it actually falls. And once you have the information that it is typically, if it is low solubility, it will be class 2 or class 4. So then you go back and in literature see for class 2 and class 4 what type of excipients have helped solubilizing most of the drugs. So by now, we know that we have systems which are available, which are platform technology. So all we have to do is take the natural component and put it in it, and it works well in most of the cases. But I would say that go to Getafos site. Getafos is a company which gives you many of the oils as well as many of the surfactant, co-surfactants, and it gives you complete details of their HLP values, the structures. They do have many catalogs which give you information as to which kind of components go in which kind of systems. So that can be the starting point for you. I hope I've answered.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
If
thank you
anything
so
is
much,
there
ma'am.
which you would like us to tackle, I don't mind collaborating and solubilizing and giving it, provided we get due credentials.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I need your ID, ma'am. Email ID.
vbpatravale@gmail.com. That's easy.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Surely I'll mail you, ma'am, today itself.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Are there any participants who want to ask anything to ma'am? Okay, ma'am, I think in one of your work that you presented that was regarding to check the permeability in eye. That was with norfloxacin, where you checked up with you made up the drug polymer conjugate and you tried to check out the interaction with the mucin. Just wanted to know that, say, whenever you are checking up the interaction and say your drug polymer conjugate shows a very good interaction with mucin. So, are you able to predict from that interaction if that interaction is going to cause any harm to the mucin? Because I think that is one of the thing which probably would be needed whenever the formulation is designed. Is it
Definitely.
so?
Definitely. So, what is important? See, by designing this, what I've done, I'm releasing it in a controlled fashion. So, you'll have to do the Dre's eye patch, there's eye irritation test as well as histopatch studies, which will subsequently have to be performed. But keeping in mind that there is a tear flow rate, right? Mucin gets regenerated, it definitely gets regenerated over a period of time. I don't see much of a issue, but as you rightly put it up, that we need to perform such kind of studies before taking it to the commercial level. Sure,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah, one more participant wants to ask a question. Yes, Dr. Rajni, you can ask your question.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning.
Thank you for your valuable presentation, madam. This is my second EFDP on Atal. Already I attended the EFDP organized by Bombay College of Pharmacy, and you have given the keynote address on multifaceted approach for safe and effective delivery of medicines, madam.
I
I
think most
attended
of
your
it was a repeat here.
yes. It's really wonderful, madam, sharing a platform with such a kind of a resource person. definitely the faculty from the Department of Pharmaceutics, not only that who are working on biopharmaceutics and kinetics in research, it will be a great help for them. Basically, I am a pharmaceutical chemistry person, madam, but still I would like to ask a query.
Sure.
Madam, could we use this computational pharmaceutics in drug repurposing, madam? Will it add any value?
Yes,
Could you
100%
please
yes.
highlight on that, madam?
100% yes. In fact, that's a big field again in which we have started working. And
Yes.
with again COVID coming in, there was a lot of emphasis given on drug repurposing. So
Yes.
one could, what I am doing at present is whatever moieties have been actually withdrawn from the market,
Yes.
okay, for not
Yes.
being effective or for having some side effects for
And
a particular type.
especially, madam, that phase 4 clinical trials, even though that post-marketing surveillance they clear, but they are banned from the market.
Right. So you can
such,
look at if you
yeah.
can, if their initial safety data is available, that becomes your advantage because safety data is available and you
Yes.
can use them at lower concentrations and make good formulations to take them ahead. So
Yes. Yes.
I feel that has a lot of potential. In fact, if I remember, Ahmedabad, there's a repository of many such drug molecules, and you can probably go to that library and take those drugs also from there for experimentation purposes once your in silico work is done.
Okay. 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 Thank you, madam. Thank you for highlighting on that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Another participant, Dr. Namdev Zadav, sir.
I
So
know
you
now
can
I'm
ask your
scared.
question.
Sir,
Yeah.
easy wala.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good
Actually,
afternoon.
initial 10-15 minutes I couldn't attend session. It was extraordinary presentation, ma'am, as usual. And one thing I would like to know, rather, I feel you should share with the delegates, like how you manage so many things, ma'am. Like lot of research areas, the way you showed all case studies, and in addition to this, you are managing such a big family. So can you share your experience, like how you are managing all those things at a time? Still, you are calm and cool. So how you do that, ma'am? Can you
Oh,
share?
I think last sentence is not correct. I'm not very calm and cool person, though
No,
I
ma'am,
intend to be.
you are
Yeah,
you.
so I am thankful to my family members. Yes, I would say family, professional family as well as personal family. I think a lot of credit has to be given to them. So my professional family at ICT definitely you all train them so well that when they come to me, I have nothing much to do. So they are a motivated lot because of which my things get done. On the personal front, yes, both my dear husband as well as my son are a big support. At 1 or 2 p.m. I'm sitting and talking to you. I'm sure they must be waiting for lunch, but they have not come in my room. So that's the kind of support which I get from them, not only today, every day. So I think God is really great to give me such family. Yeah, coming to the minute points of it, yes, I do prioritize my work. So I have a daily schedule which starts at 6:30. I go to bed by 12:30. So meditation is part of my daily life, twice daily. So to whatever some extent I am cool, I owe it to all the meditation. But only problem is that I speak whatever comes in my heart that hurts many people at times. I'm very sorry for that. So meditation twice daily helps. Then I make a plan. It's a daily plan which is there on all my devices. So it actually flashes. So that's the main reason why I think I'm getting into Alzheimer's mode because I have become dependent on so many devices. I think I should give my brain more functions to perform. So once I've joined everything, I see to it that I'm able to do full justice to it, where everyone comes to support. See, no one says no. I'm sure Dr. Jadhav, even if I gave you something that this
Yes,
needs
yes,
to be done, you will also support me. So
yes, sure,
now,
ma'am. Sure.
now with this gray hair, which I flash, people don't say no to me.
Yes, yes, that's true, ma'am. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, madam, for a wonderful session. And we really enjoyed having this much of content and of case studies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhatia. It is always a pleasure, and there's a lot of learning which I have to do from your side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I think there were many questions coming in, but we have next session scheduled at 1 o'clock. So I apologize all the participants that I won't be able to take up all those questions. And
I
apologize
have
to you
already
also,
given.
ma'am, that
I've given my
yeah,
mail ID. They can write to me, and I would
yeah.
answer.
Yeah, so I will request all the participants to please mail your queries to ma'am. Ma'am has given her mail ID, and um, we'll move to the end of this session. Over to you, Sneha.
Very sincere thanks to you, ma'am, for the sea of wisdom and the knowledge you shared with us during your amazing lecture flows, computational simulations, its applications in drug delivery system and designing. And we really appreciate your efforts for sharing your experimental experience with us. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot,
Sneha.
ma'am.